Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council to order. Today is Tuesday, April 14, 2026. I would ask that the record reflect the council members that are present here this evening, as well as CRMC staff that is here. First matter on the agenda is approval of minutes of the previous meeting, that being March 24, 2026. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented unless there are any offered changes.
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Having none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Subcommittee report. Director Willis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Two subcommittee reports, one planning and procedures, the other the rights of way. Last night, the rights of way subcommittee held another meeting on the Spring Ave extension matter. We have set additional dates for that. Please check our website and calendar to keep track of those. And at the planning and procedures subcommittee meeting earlier today, discussion was had on having staff do additional research on whether or not boat lifts are something that the program would like to address within the confines of a marina in the marina perimeter limit. So staff will continue its research on that issue and bring it back to the subcommittee for their consideration at a later date. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Any questions of Director Willis on the subcommittee report from the council? No. Staff reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple items. Emily is going to go into more detail in her presentation on the Breachway tonight, but last week, we, DEM, CRMC, the town of Charlestown, and other partners met at the Breachway to celebrate the completion of that project. I won't take any thunder away from what Emily wants to present, but that was a very good event for a very good project that Emily will go into a lot more detail in a second. We also last week were invited to attend Senator Whitehouse's Environment Day. And that was held at the, I was going to say the Inn at the Crossings, but it's not that anymore, right? It used to be called Inn at the Crossings. Crown Plaza, right? Where there was several panel discussions or one-on-one interviews on various issues related to climate change, an issue that's near and dear to the senator's heart. CRMC participated in several. We were obviously part of the audience and the rest. We are also embarking on a project with the University of Rhode Island to look at the impacts of offshore wind farms in federal waters on recreational fishing. If you remember a couple of years ago, we also embarked on a similar project with URI to look at the impacts of recreational fishing within Narragansett Bay. This is taking that project and putting it into the offshore waters and look at the potential impacts to recreational fishing from renewable energy projects, something that there's really no data on. It's very, very lacking. It's all anecdotal. So we'd like to get a little more empirical data on that. I think that's it for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Any questions of Director Willis on the staff report? Okay. Next matter is Educational Series Charlestown Breachway Project. Emily Hall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me this evening. I will try to keep this on the briefer side and engaging, but if any member of the council has questions or curiosities as we go, I'm happy to entertain those. So this evening, I'll be giving a brief history, an overview of the failure and recent repairs that occurred at the Charlestown Breachway. So to orient us, as we all know, the Rhode Island South Shore is 95% erosional. It is what geologists describe as a sediment-starved system. The sand that is in the system now is what we have. We're not really getting more sand added to the system. On average, our barriers are eroding at about 1.8 feet per year. And generally, we see net shoreline transport of sediment from west to east. So sediment that starts at Watch Hill will eventually, given several decades, some of it will wind up at Point Judith. So we're going to keep that in mind as we go into the presentation this evening. Across the South Shore, we have what I kind of group in as about 9 salt ponds with their associated barrier complexes. Here you can see our regulatory barriers highlighted in red and yellow, and 4 of those have actual constructed breachways. From west to east, they are Weekapaug, Quaney, Charlestown, and Galilee breachways. While we know the construction dates of Galilee and Charlestown around 1910 and 1952 respectively, the historical record is actually pretty unclear from my brief review for Weekapaug and Quaney, but it was sometime after the Charlestown breachway itself was constructed. The South Shore has historically been a fishing community, and as part of that, having actual tidal flow between the salt ponds, which are actually coastal lagoons, and Block Island Sound itself has been prioritized, keeping the water more that mix of salt and fresh to have that brackish, our oyster populations, things along those lines. It's been historically valued. We have news articles from as far back as the 1890s discussing locals building and maintaining the breachway on their own by hand, but the first official structure was built in 1904, and its current configuration with both jetties was finished in 1952. So from 52 to today, it stood for about 75 years with no maintenance, no intervention. So pulling up some of the historical imagery, because I think a picture does tell 1,000 words in some cases. 1939 is the oldest photo we have. And you can see that east jetty that's been installed in 1908, but there's no western jetty. Again, if we remember, our net shoreline transport tends to be from west to east. We can kind of see that happening here. We see sand accumulating on the western side of the breachway, starting to clog things up. And by the imagery in 1951, the breachway itself has actually closed again, partially from that longshore transport. So it's not functioning the way that the community intended it to. In 52, they were able to construct the western jetty. This construction was done by the Rhode Island River and Harbors Commission, which is now defunct. The actual lands and structures owned by rivers and harbors were then transferred over to the Department of Environmental Management, or DEM. And from 1952 on, even with all of those hurricanes and storms that we had, the breachway remained fairly open and functional for the rest of the century. And then, of course, we all remember Sandy. So this is a before and after photo from Sandy. So I want you to notice two things. One, the beach itself has recovered, right? This is a pretty resilient system. Both before and after Sandy, there are large beaches for everyone to enjoy. Unfortunately, the dune itself is what actually eroded away during that event. And essentially, I like to say that the dune didn't have time to catch its breath. It didn't have time to recover and to build back up on that longer time scale. So in this red highlighted box here, you can see that kind of green vegetated area is no longer after Sandy. And that winds up being a structural weakness in the system itself for the decade after. This is highlighted in the 3 nor'easters we got in the 23-24 winter season. The first one hit on December 18th, 2023, and you can see that area where there used to be a dune when there was Hurricane Sandy is no longer, and in fact, the water is flowing straight through the breachway itself. We then got 2 more storms on January 10th in the top right and January 13th in the bottom left. And in each of those, we saw that continued, ironically, breaching of the breachway itself. That west jetty is no longer functioning. It is no longer holding back sand. And there, in fact, was no beach left, really, after these storms. So again, if we go back to our aerials, this is before that winter on the left, and then right after that winter on the right. So we are left with no dune that had recovered and no beach, right? And then since our shoreline transport dominantly is from west to east, all of that sand is still moving, but it's moving into the channel itself, which poses a major problem. So again, this is where that lack of dune was, and now we see that structural weakness in the dune system being propagated to the structural weakness in the heart of the shoreline as well. Luckily, in parallel to all of this, the town knew that they were running out of time on the breachway. They knew it had been 70 some odd years since anyone had maintained this, and they were able to embrace the Municipal Resilience Program. We refer to it as the MRP program. And in 2022, they actually made a municipal resilience plan in which they highlighted all of the hazards and risks in their infrastructure at that time. One of those was saying the breachway is experiencing siltation. And the west side is in a concerning state of disrepair. So it reads almost prophetic that a year later, that western jetty would in fact fail. And because of that planning effort, because they had identified it, in 2024, they were then able to apply for an action grant to do engineering design and permitting. So it was both luck and this planning component combined that when the emergency happened, wheels were already in motion to find a solution. One of the spokes of that wheel was engagement and outreach. This was primarily led by the Department of Marine Affairs and Dr. Emily Diamond. And over the course of that summer in which the Breachway had failed, they did an extensive outreach campaign. There was stakeholder analysis, there were focus groups, and most impressively, they had an online survey with over 750 participants in which folks talked about what is important to them, what matters when it comes to resiliency, what do they want out of the Breachway and Ninigret Pond. Some of their key findings is that visitors and residents showed a strong place attachment and identification with the coastal areas across Charlestown. And even among residents and visitors alike, there's strong motivation to repair the Breachway as soon as possible. Additionally, there were key concerns of public safety, the health of the pond, protecting local businesses, and just the future maintenance of all of this. So to take a little bit of a step back, why does it matter that there's sand in one of the 4 channels connecting the salt ponds? It presented an emergency across several fronts. One, it was a public safety risk. So on the right here is a map that the Charlestown Police Department would update pretty much weekly online, trying to say this is the safe way to get out of the Breachway that is now clogged with sand. Additionally, because of that dune damage, there's less protection for inland properties and worries about higher water levels and whatnot. And then water quality was really the big one everyone was concerned about. With the channel clogged and without water flushing in and out the way that we wanted, the worry is things were going to get too nutrient dense, things were going to clog up, they were going to smell, what have you. One of the nice phrases I got from aquaculture folks is no flow, no grow, no dough. It's a little colloquial, but they have kind of reported that in years where the Breachway is dredged and open, the oysters are better, right? And about 40% of the state's aquaculture is actually in Ninigret Pond. So this is not just something that is affecting Charlestown, it's affecting the state as a whole. So what did we do about it? Since DEM actually owned the Breachway and the town was the major stakeholder, they were able to do a 50-50 cost share for this emergency solution. Up here on the right, we have a bunch of the partners who were involved in this process. They were able to use those existing funds from MRP and said, all right, instead of just doing a conceptual design, let's just use it. Let's just go. Let's hit the ground running. And this is what we wound up with. We were able to essentially plug the gap. So this is what it looks like right before they started work in the background, and then they were able to get enough stones in to basically just stop that water movement and critically the sediment movement into the channel. The result, we saw that lateral transport and accretion at work. Within just a few weeks, we saw the sand and the beach itself starting to build back up because we've now put that doorstop back in place on the western jetty. Of course, a Band-Aid does not fix a broken bone, and this really just highlighted the structural problems we had with the Breachway as a whole. So we were able to continue holding outreach events throughout that following year. We had in August and May of 2025 to kind of say, hey, here's what we did for the emergency fix. Here's what we're planning on doing for the final fix. And then it was a budget and funding campaign, as it often comes down to. So with the assistance of the General Assembly, as well as the support from the governor's office, we were able to amend our capital budgets across both DEM and CRMC. So we were able to use about $2 million for the CRMC Dredge Fund, $5 million from DEM, which then got kind of pushed through CRMC with some budget finagling to make sure everything could happen on time, and about 1.4 from the town's maintenance fund itself. So it was really this multi-levels of government working together on communication, working together on outreach and planning, and then critically working together on this final funding step. So this all only just recently wrapped up. They started building the jetty core itself in November, because they wanted to make sure they had that backstop in place. And then they were able to dredge during the dredging season from December to January, and finally putting in armor stones and building all the dunes late this winter. So our press event was, I believe, just last week, maybe the week before. And we had a walkthrough with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Everyone is happy. Goodness, it's one of those projects that was just really great to see it all come together. No one was surprised at the end. So this is a couple of snippets of the site plan itself. So on the left, kind of starting where those red lines are, we worked inland from where the emergency repair was. Some folks, especially when we were engaging with the public, were a little confused by that. They were like, oh, but the stuff out in the ocean matters more, right? It's getting more beat up by the storms. And we said, okay, but if we look over the 75-year history, part of the reason this fails is because the beach itself is migrating inland, right? So we want to be prepared for where is the active beach face going to be, not just today, but 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 70 years from now. And critically, we designed it to 2100 levels. So it's designed for the 25-year storm under the high curve of sea level rise from NOAA. In conjunction with this, because there's not enough things going on in one winter, we were also able to dredge out the channel. So all of that extra sediment that had clogged up the channel and clogged up the pond during this emergency scenario, we were able to basically take all of that out. About a third of it was used to rebuild the dunes over by the Breachway, and the rest was sent to the town beach, as is normal during a dredging year. It was about 95,000 cubic yards of sediment, which can be tough to wrap your head around. It's about 30 Olympic swimming pools of sand. And then critically, here's those dunes we talked about, right? We're trying to not just build up the hard infrastructure, but work with that nature-based system as well to say we want the entire system to function harmonically and together. So this outline here is the dune that we're hoping is going to take the brunt of the force, if you will, before it hits the actual reconstructed wall that we have. And this is what it looked like when we were out there, last week. The western wall looks very nice now. It makes the eastern wall look a little shabby. But since we are mostly talking about transport west to east, energy west to east, if this western wall works, the hope is the eastern wall won't need as much repair, right? Because this is now taking most of the force. It's taking most of that kind of force shield, if you will. So with that, a couple kind of lasting notes for why this was such a success. Planning ahead really allowed for the quick response. If Charlestown hadn't already initiated that MRP process, I don't think we would have been able to respond as quickly as we were able to. We had all levels of government working together and communications with all parties during the emergency. So there were folks from the town council, folks from the General Assembly. We were in contact with Senators Reid and Whitehouse. Everyone was talking. We were all on the same page, which meant make things go as smoothly as possible. Additionally, it was really well received by the community. We were engaging with them from day one. We prioritized the nature-based elements of the project. And I personally haven't really heard any pushback, except for a couple of folks upset that they can't see the sunset quite as well from the parking lot for the state beaches. And now, of course, the question is other coastal infrastructure, right? This is one of our 4 breachways that were all constructed around this time. So staff are making an effort to reach out to other municipalities that have these structures, and DEM and Charlestown are already working on plans for the Quanticook Breachway. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has them. I'm also happy to stop talking because I know it's probably been about 20 minutes.
Any questions of Emily from the council?
Thank you for the presentation, really informative. Which of the other breachways do you think is the most important?
Quanticook for sure.
Okay.
So I'll show you that overview image. So if you look at Quaney, second from the left here, this is that western wall. This tiny little dune here has eroded significantly. And the worry here is you even see some sand north of it. So unfortunately, on the tide that's coming out, the worry is the water is coming in and attacking it from the north and not just from the south. So it's getting eaten away at both sides. I know DEM has a National Coastal Resilience NIFWIF grant from a few years ago that got them to 30% design stage. I believe they just put in to get to the 60 or 90% design stage now, and they have a few contractors working on it full time. So I'm hopeful things will continue to move on that end. But as you see, Galilee and Weekapaug are both more industrialized, they're more developed. So in a way, those folks have already been investing in putting in sand because they want to keep their beach, right? So they're not as high priority at the moment.
And if I may, The Galilee breach is the responsibility of the federal government through the Army Corps of Engineers, because that was congressionally authorized in 1901, 1905, somewhere around there. So the Army Corps are looking at the center wall of the Harbor Refuge, which is in the worst shape of the three. There's three walls that comprise the Harbor Refuge in Galilee, and the center wall is in tough shape.
Did you come in on budget?
We did.
Excellent.
Very successful.
Very
happy
impressive.
we did. The dredging was a little bit of a worry because if there's more sand than they expect, you can do over dredging and then that accumulates prices really quick. But overall, we came in on budget and the town funds was kind of there to absorb that extra cost that we wouldn't be expecting as much. So it worked out well.
Maybe it'll last 100 years.
Hopefully. We'll be gone by then though.
Any other questions for Emily? Okay, thank you, Emily.
With the council.
Makes sense. That brings us to our next matter on the agenda. It's an application that's been out to notice for 30 days and it's before the council for review and action. It's 2025-06-017, Town of Narragansett. It's an application for dredging of the existing sandbar at the mouth of the Narrow River with placement of material onto the adjacent barrier spit located in the lower Narrow River / the Narrows. The applicant present this evening. Can they come forward?
Before we begin, I'm just going to swear all of you, and are you all going to be testifying tonight? Okay, so preparing for that, I'll ask you all to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please, from my left to right, state and spell your name for the record.
Gerhard, JONATHANDERHARD, town engineer.
Caitlin Cross, AITLYN, Cross, CROSS, and project manager with both.
And Michael Campagnone, CAMPAGNONE, with both as well.
Thank you all.
All right. Mason, you have this one for us?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, if you could just
Thank you,
present.
Mr. Chair. So in recent years, a series of coastal storms has resulted in sedimentation migration from the adjacent barrier spit, significant shoaling in the mouth of the Narrow River. And it's made a previously navigable section of the river essentially unnavigable at certain tides. So what the town of Narragansett is proposing is to dredge approximately 41,000 cubic yards of material near the mouth of the Narrow River. The main goal of this is to restore that section to pre-existing conditions prior to these storms and the shoaling event, while also beneficially reusing that material for beach nourishment and dune enhancement. At the end of the report, which you all have probably read, there's a series of images that show pre-existing conditions prior to these storms and then existing conditions we're dealing with now. So there's a significant difference. And you can see how there's a plug of material forming at that mouth of the river. In addition to the beneficial use areas that the applicant and consultant have highlighted, there's also plans to stockpile a small portion of material and one of the town beach's west parking lot. So the intent of that stockpile of material is to re-enhance the dune. If in between initial placement and the dune planting season, any of the material erodes away, they can regrade that and get it back up to the design template. Alternatively, if the dune doesn't erode away and it all looks good, that material can be beneficially used on the town beach. So that's another aspect of the project. One item I did want to note is that it's staff's opinion that there's no special exceptions needed for this project as it's considered beach replenishment by CRMP definition. So it's not a prohibited activity in type 2 waters. In addition to that, for the Narrow River SAMP, a couple of the council priorities, dredging to support existing recreational use is permitted. The council favors the use of dredge material for beach replenishment projects. And finally, dredging should only be allowed to minimal dimensions necessary to support the demonstrated previous level of use. So in the opinion of staff, the plan proposed, the dredge footprint and the panel proposed does tie into the existing natural conditions, the natural depth that's there right now. We think that it closely, to the maximum extent possible, mirrors what was there previously before these winter storm events. And something we looked at when we were doing this is, are they widening the channel and deepening the channel to the extent where larger vessels would come in and out? And just the opinion of staff that no, they aren't. It's a pretty modest dredging project. Moving on to the public notice period. So there were no objections submitted during the public notice period, but there were some comments received from the River Preservation Association, Save the Bay, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So I'll start with Fish and Wildlife. Their comments were mainly centered around the fact that they wanted coordination from the Army Corps, particularly on Endangered Species Act, lightning plovers being the big one, the proposed beach and dune fill prior to receiving an Army Corps permit. So it's my understanding that the Army Corps is in consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service right now as part of their application process. Moving on to Narrow River Preservation Association and Save the Bay concerns. They mentioned that they recommended a tidal monitoring plan. So essentially, determining what the water levels are pre-dredging and post-dredging to see if removing this plug of material at the mouth affects the high highs and the low tides. So that was one aspect. Another one being a dune planting plan be developed on the front end of the project and approved by CRMC. So staff worked with the stakeholders, the consultant and the applicant, developed these plans. There's some back and forth. We think we came to amenable terms for everyone. Everyone's happy with these two plans. In addition to that, development of a long-term maintenance plan. So I'd like to point out, it is a requirement of the Narrow River SAMP that any dredging event in the Narrow River has a long-term maintenance plan for dredging. So staff plans to stipulate that as such and as we've outlined in the report to follow the Narrow River SAMP and what's called out there. An additional item, regular surveys of the dredge area. So what we chalk this up to is annual surveys post-dredge event for a period of 5 years. And the purpose of this is really to monitor how material shifting after the dredge event and try and identify some triggers for when dredging might be needed in the future so we don't get to the point where, okay, the channel's plugged, but it's running aground and it's a last minute effort to get a project approved and done. So that would be tied into that long-term maintenance plan to identify those triggers, get the survey data and kind of tie that whole plan together. Finally is the question of filling of tidal waters, who owns this land, and talking with legal counsel at CRMC internally, staff proposes to stipulate that a pre-post survey be conducted prior to the dredging event to establish property lines, and another post-dredge survey be conducted after the fact to establish these property lines, and add a stipulation that any filled lands remain titled to the state of Rhode Island for the public trust. So those stipulations were all outlined in our report. There's a total of 10 stipulations in there. I wasn't planning on reading through them unless you'd like me to. And finally, as far as other agency permits go, I already touched on the Army Corps permit. They're in consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, so that's ongoing. My understanding is the DEM permit is forthcoming as well. They were just waiting on input from Fisheries Department on the potential time of year shift, different than the standard October 15th to January 31st. So I think there's going to be a slight difference there due to the herring runs coming down in the fall period. Other than that, I worked side by side with Emily Hall on this. I was kind of over the dredging and overall project, and I was bouncing ideas off her on the technical side, concentrating on the beach placement and dune design and whatnot. So we're happy to answer any questions the council has.
Any questions of Mason from the council? Mr. Flynn?
I have to say, I was a little confused about the placement of the dredge materials. I just heard you say that some of the dredge materials are going to go to the town beach.
So,
But in the town's application, it says that that alternative might be considered for future dredging, but not this one.
yeah, so that's something that came to fruition kind of when we were going back and forth with the other stakeholders, and it's just before money, 750 yards was proposed.
What percentage of that compared to what's going to go on the spit? Which is where the vast
say-
majority is going to
Say 2%, so you have
go?
41,000.
90%.
Yeah, 41,000 total, 750 cubic yards going to there.
So the vast majority goes to the spit, for
Correct.
lack of a better word.
And
Okay.
it's possible that whole 750 yards goes to the spit as well, depending how that dune erodes prior to the dune planting season.
Maybe this is for the town, but does the town, on a regular basis, have to import sand for the beach?
We have an annual maintenance program where I believe, you may recall the right number, about 500 yards.
We just did this
we
2
have it.
weeks ago. I believe it was 500.
It's 500 yards, and if we need to import it, we do, and we generally put some sand on the beach each year and take a permit. It's 3 years, 2 years into a 3-year permit. And we do that usually, but we don't do large quantities. Sandy, there was, I think 14 or 15,000 yards that were collected in the parking lot and then cleaned them, and we have raised them more and restored after that, but we just have a small.
And to clarify too, that the intent of that dredge material is not to be the primary placement on the town beach. It's intended to be in the event that a storm comes in and impacts the dune prior to us being able to plant. So that's from the close of the dredge window to when plants can be planted safely. It's intended to refill the dune if a storm occurs. If it's not needed, it would then go onto the town beach.
Okay, but it's still a tiny amount
Yeah.
compared to the overall project.
Correct.
Okay, that clarifies things for me. Thank you.
Any further questions from the council to Mason or Emily? Okay, is there anything you'd like to add at this point as it relates to your application?
From our standpoint, we've been talking about this for a while here now. It's been short term, I think, really, in terms of some of the other projects, but I know it's been hastened with some of the storms we had in 23-24 winter. And we just look forward to being able to get it permitted so that we can have this event happen. I know the towns, as Mason mentioned, that there's no opposition publicly. We've got a lot of people in the town who support it. We've got council members here today to show their support for it as well, and just look forward to receiving a permit.
Any questions from the council to the applicants that are before us right now?
Just one more question.
Yes, Mr.
What's the
Flynn.
timing of the work?
This one would be the normal dredge window of October to January this year. If we
The end of this
if we
year.
get it permitted, there is a funding issue though as well, but it's you have CRMC has a dredging fund, so we might like to talk about that as well. We need the permits first, and then we'll be out to bid and pursuing more aggressively funding sources.
Any other questions? All right, at this time, I'm just gonna ask, is there anyone else present this evening that wishes to speak in favor of the application? Sir? If I could just ask you guys to sit back, and if anyone comes up, we'll have them speak. Okay. Okay. Do you want to swear in? Or is it just public comment?
I believe this is public comment, so.
All right, just identify yourself. For the
Yeah, my
record.
name's Chris Dodge. I'm the Narragansett Baykeeper for Save the Bay. I guess it's kind of in support, but mostly in support of staff and the applicant and the process. Just so often I find myself with the opportunity to speak in front of you in opposition to something, and don't often get the opportunity or take the opportunity to come in and say like thank you to staff and the applicant in this case for receiving our public comment, including recommendations, Save the Bays recommendations into the process, including them as part of the application, and stipulations that are recommended by staff from both us and other concerned parties that were part of the public comment process. Save the Bay has been involved in habitat restoration efforts in the Narrow River for quite some time now. Have a real vested interest in the health of the river, the salt marsh habitat within the river, and specifically as some of our comments pointed to the population, a breeding population of endangered salt marsh sparrow that live in the marsh there at the mouth of the river. So we appreciate the inclusion of the proposed data loggers for monitoring water levels, tidal fluctuations, potentially in the river, the requirement for the long-term maintenance plan, and other recommendations as mentioned by staff. And then finally, just moving forward, Save the Bay wanted to reiterate that we remain available to staff, to the applicant, and eager to participate in any future discussion around that long-term development of a long-term maintenance plan in response to any data collected from the loggers and what that might tell us about the work that happened, in addition to any of the future topographic, hydrographic surveys. Just really open and eager to participate in any further work that is focused on the river and to help protect the river and the habitat around it. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions of the witness? Well, thank you much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councilors.
Is there anyone else present that wishes to speak in favor of the lady in the front, please?
I'm Veronica Borowski. I'm president of the Narrow River Preservation Association. Please spell your last name. Sure, it's BEROUNSKY. This here, you have already submitted comments. I think a lot of people are online, whether it's Fish and Wildlife, Save the Bay, and Narrow River Preservation Association, are very supportive of this project. And we also, the stipulations that the staff scientists have put on about the maintenance dredging, which is reiterating, we know how important that is to keep doing that. Interested in what's going on with the species that are out there, the water level monitoring. It's very important. And just as They said, we are here for you to continue the conversation as we go along. We certainly don't want anything to go. We don't want there to be problems. We want to have discussion along the way. It's been a well thought out proposal. The staff scientists have been doing a great job on this. We're really happy with what you're doing. It's like Save the Bay said, we're happy to be on your side with all this. It's been a process for a long time. NRPA has been around since 1970. And dredging has come up so many times, and I've seen it myself. The storms that happened before this have made more changes to the system than we've ever seen in the past. And so I think it's really important that we tackle the dredging this way, but with all the stipulations that. And one of the things NRPA would like to do is we have a 34-year of monitoring. Actually, we just finished 34 years, part of the URI Watershed Watch program, and we would like to, our last station is at Sprague Bridge, and we'd like to establish a station that's closer to what they call Dog Island, closer to the spit, and monitor that. And so we're kind of looking into ways that we could do that, perhaps partnering with the Youth Club or partnering with the town. But because I think that would be really important to look at what's happening with water quality at that point. We have Sprague Bridge, but that's affected a lot by what's happening in Sprague Bridge. So that's something that we're working towards, and if there's any way that we can all work together on that, that would be. And thanks for all of your work. You get great people in there. Thanks for listening to what everybody said.
You any questions of the witness from the council? Oh, okay. Thank you much. Gentleman in the back, please.
Good evening. My name is Alex Menzies. I'm the Narragansett Town Council President. I'm joined here by Mr. Jim Durkin, who's the President Pro Tem of the Narragansett Town Council as well. And I've been told to keep it brief, so in that spirit, I wrote down what I'm going to say. So I'm speaking on behalf of the town of Narragansett to express our strong support for the dredging at Lower Narrow River. Narrow River is one of Rhode Island's most important natural resources. It supports wildlife, provides recreation, and serves communities in Narragansett, South Kingstown, and North Kingstown in the immediate, but for all residents who visit the Ocean State and who have the luxury of living here as well. Over time, sand and sediment have built up at the mouth of the river. This has reduced the flow of water in and out of the estuary. As a result, water quality has declined, habitats have been disrupted, and the overall health of the river is at risk. Dredging is a necessary step to restore proper water flow and protect the plants and animals that depend on this ecosystem. This is not just a local issue. A healthy Narrow River benefits multiple communities. It helps protect shorelines, supports fish and wildlife, and preserves an important natural system that extends beyond any one town. It's also about public access and safety. Thousands of people use Narrow River each year for kayaking, fishing, swimming, and learning about the environment. The condition of the river directly affects water quality and the safety of those activities. There is urgency here. If we do not act, sediment will continue to build up, increasing the risk of flooding, harming wildlife, and further damaging the river. By moving forward with this project, we are investing in the long-term health of our environment and our communities. It's a responsible step that will benefit both current residents and future generations. It is for these reasons that I, as president of the Narragansett Town Council and member of the Coastal Access Improvement Committee in the town of Narragansett, and Mr. Durkin, as pro tem on behalf of the Narragansett Town, fully supports efforts to secure the resources and permitting needed to complete this dredging project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Durkin, anything to add?
I just wanted to say thank you for hopefully supporting this application. I like listening to Mr. Mason, and the idea of the continued maintenance program, I think, would be beneficial to the town of Narragansett, and I'm sure we can help institute that while we're in office. I always wondered how the Breachway at Charlestown got fixed so fast, but now I understand the reason, because your explanation was so well talked about. So now I understand that, and if we had been more proactive, I think maybe Oz would have been too. So anyway, we're always learning late, but.
And again, seeing the extraordinary successes and celebrating what's been done at the Charlestown Breachway, we hope that a similar celebration can be done in Narragansett for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the gentleman at the table from the council? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else present this evening that wishes to speak on the application? Attorney Main.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Robin Main, MAIN, on behalf of the Dunes Club. I would first like to start off by saying that the Dunes Club heartily supports this application. In fact, it has since day one. And back almost a year ago, it sent a letter to the Coastal Resources Management Council, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in support of this project. And we come before you tonight again, saying that we support this project. Furthermore, we are working with the town and will with the town. We understand the urgency of this project. And we will provide access because the Dunes property is, directly proximate to this project. We will provide access for the town and the engineers that the town is using and its contractors so that they can get into this area more easily. And of course, we'll work through insurance issues, et cetera. But again, we will cooperate with the town on access. The other point we'd like to make tonight is we certainly support Mr. Sherman's comments about doing pre and post surveys. We support this because it's necessary to avoid confusion. The state has land in the public trust below the mean high tide line, and having that demarcation, and as the staff report acknowledges, having information about boundary lines between land held in the public trust and private property is very important here. So we also support that survey work to the extent that we have more historical surveys, which may be obsolete at this point in that area, given what we saw in the storms and the work that the Dunes Club itself had to do as a result of the storms you're talking about. But if we have historical information that you still want to take a look at on surveys, we're happy to make that available as well. So again, we thank you. We thank you for looking at the survey issues to demarcate public trust from private property, and we're here to support this application.
Thank you. Any questions of Attorney Main? Thank you much. Anyone else present this evening that wishes to speak on the application? All right. Mr. Sherman, anything to add, or Ms. Hall?
Not for me, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is the council in a posture for a motion?
I'll move to approve the application subject to the standard stipulations. In addition, the additional stipulations on pages 12 and 13 of the staff report, numbered 1 through 10.
And Mr. Russolino, is that based on the staff report supplied tonight as well as the testimony before the council? Oh, is that based on the testimony before the council tonight?
Correct.
Thank you. So a motion has been made by Mr. Russolino. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gagnon. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will poll the council. Mr. Flynn?
Aye.
Mr. Izzy?
Aye.
Mr. Russolino?
Aye.
Mr. Gagnon?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. The application has been approved. Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the council this evening?
There are none, Mr. Chair.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.